welcome your host, Mr. Sydney Brownwood.
Hello, good evening, hello and welcome. Hello, welcome to this, the TooFatLardies Oddcast. We're back in the studio once again on a long, hot, early summer's day here on Lard Island as I sip a refreshing, long, cool drink. And I'm joined by the two men behind TooFatLardies, the Peter Murrell and Nicholas Sturgeon of Wargaming, Nick Skinner and Richard Clark. Gentlemen, step into the metaphorical motorhome that is the Lard Island studio. How are you both?
I'm looking forward to using your expensive coffee machines.
Your range of coffee machines.
Yeah, and your £400 hairdryer.
No comments on that. But anyway, how are you both? It's been a real scorcher this month so far in the United Kingdom, but you're both looking well.
Yeah, love it. I love the hot weather. It's really nice. Even those nights when you can't quite get to sleep, you still know it's lovely and warm. You can have a nice sunny day tomorrow. It just puts an extra spring in the step, doesn't it, Sid? It just puts an extra cube in the Pim's jug of life.
It does. I got out and did 25 miles walking last week, and slightly less this week. But I've even got my little track thing out. What do you call it? Running machine. That fucked up my hip, but there we are.
You mean a little conveyor belt?
Yeah, a little conveyor belt. I have one under the desk, and the desk goes up. And look, I don't know if you can see it.
No, we can't.
No, so well, the desk goes up, and I can stand at the desk and work whilst walking on the walking machine. Really, not well. You can run if you want, but I prefer not to. So yeah, the weather's been good, and it kind of makes you feel like, yeah, let's get out and do it. Mr. Motivator. I see myself really casting the role of the Mr. Motivator of wargaming, as opposed to somebody who nicked hundreds of thousands of pounds. But there we are.
Well, at least you're not the Green Goddess or something like that.
That's Nick. That's Nick. Or it could be you, actually, Sid. You dressed for the role.
I think that's much more Sydney, the Green
Goddess. The Green Hornet, maybe.
Yeah, well, Mr. Motivator lives just down the road. I saw him putting petrol in his car.
Oh, did that motivate you to do the same?
Well, you can't really miss him sometimes when he's wearing his day glow outfit.
Yeah.
We've probably lost half of the listeners by now. So we are just about to head into June 2026 for those listening in 2029. And the wargaming calendar is bulging with great events. Richard, I know you headed up to Partisan recently. We're all off to Evesham next week in the Midlands of the United Kingdom for Operation Market Larden, one of the best events of the year, but there's also lots happening elsewhere. We've got Deep Fried Lard in Musselburgh, which is why I'm wearing the Ayrshire Bar Patrons t-shirt. That's coming up with a big hello to the Clan MacLard up there. We're sorry we actually can't join you this year, at least this year, but we're sure you'll have a fabulous time. The diaries just didn't align particularly well, I'm afraid.
No, my missus has booked a holiday, and so but I'm really keen to get myself back into the habit of going up for Deep Fried Lard because I always enjoy it. It's always the most unique of trips. I just need to find a new liver, I think. But yeah, it's always a good run ashore up in Musselburgh in Edinburgh.
And also great mate of the show, great friend Don Avis, has been running Lard Workshop in conjunction with the British Historical Games Society, Nottingham the Past, but this year it's following them to Leicester and De Montfort University on Saturday the 8th of August. So there's a fair amount of events which are coming up very shortly. There's also a Midlands Lard Games Day at the start of July. So there's a packed kind of calendar. But Nick, I know you and me didn't get to Partisan this year, but Richard, you went up solo. So do you want to tell us about the event?
Yeah, smashing. I can be quite vociferous, even if not coherently so. to when talking about what I like about wargame shows and what I don't like about wargame shows. But for me, Partisan just ticks all the boxes. I was saying somewhere recently that I like games, I play games just for the fun of playing games, but really what defines me is the fact that I'm a historical wargamer, and that's what I love doing. So shows that have some historical wargaming content, but maybe more than 50% other gaming content, don't really tick the boxes for me as a punter. It's a bit like going to a shop that sells jelly and ice cream. When you only like ice cream, I'll just go to the ice cream shop and not worry about the jelly. But Partisan's everything I want it to be, really. It's it's a nice size show. It had about 3,000 people there. It had piles and piles of really great games. I mean, really lovely games. And I'm not just talking about the Lard Zone, but we had some smashing games in the Lard Zone. I've now got to remember what they were. I ran a game of Sherlock Practice, which was fun. Jasper came over from the Netherlands, artist formerly known as Holland, to run one of his Oosterbeek games, which was really smashing. He and Christy came over and on one of Jasper's handmade tables with really great period architecture. Really looks stunning. It was really good. John Savage was doing his game set in Hawaii in 1968 with Charlie Don't Surf. We had Simon Walker in the Lard Zone with a sharp practice game set in the Tyrol. We had they changed their name. Anti-Alchemists, I think they're called now, doing Blitzkrieg 1940 with Chain of Command. We had James Morris running a huge Midgard game, historical game there, medieval game. We had the guys from Like a Stonewall running their version of the Full Nelson. One of them had played it with Charlie at one of the previous Partisans and remembered the bits that he liked, and then based the game on that, which was fabulous. And we'd only just got the playtest notes out literally a day before, so I don't think he'd had a chance to read them. So very much their interpretation. But what a spectacle! It had fog banks and everything. Absolutely huge game in 1200. Looked completely stunning. So loads and loads of lard on display. There were some guys there from a Veterans War Games Association as well that I really want to give a shout out to. And they were doing a game set at the Iranian embassy.
Won a prize, I think, didn't it?
It won a prize, but they were using Iron Be Shotman.
Yeah, it's that way version of it.
Yeah. I didn't.
Amazing game where they've got the embassy over 5 tiers.
That's right. And the way they had it done is the building would stand up like that, but you could take the layers off, and they were on a step arrangement. Yeah. So it really was the amount of work that had gone into it. And unfortunately, they got let down by one of the guys who was meant to be attending, but unfortunately, bad health meant he couldn't make it, who had been on the balcony, one of the blokes who actually had been on the balcony. We were talking about stolen valor and the issue of waltz in the world, and they were saying they were really hoping that somebody would come up and go, "Oh, I was there on that balcony," and this bloke would go, "Well, actually, I really was." But unfortunately, it wasn't. I don't know if they had anybody there masquerading. It could have been the Ayatollah Khomeini lookalike or something like that. But anyway, so really good.
Is that one of the trophies that Partisan?
It was. They specifically got the Ayatollah Khomeini trophy for best stepped terrain game. Jasper won a trophy, which I thought was really funny. Best small game, and it was a small game because it was 6x4.
So his game was his Viverstraat in Oosterbeek, where the Germans are pushing down through the perimeter with a king tiger amongst other things.
Viverstraat.
Weaver.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Weaver. Wever.
Right. Okay, yeah.
You've walked up there, mate.
I might have
around it.
Well, I didn't recognise it because there wasn't a king tiger there. So I thought that was an interesting comment because is that a small game? Maybe maybe your definition of a game at a show is different to a definition of a game at your club, because where I game, that's normal. But I think shows often have that expectation that people are going to put on a 20-foot game, and I do wonder whether people see the best of rule sets when they're playing a game which has been extended way beyond what it's designed to do, and it does make a spectacle. But but actually playing a game on a 6x4 table that we all play at the club gives people an opportunity to really experience what a rule set is about, I would have thought. But there we go. Anyway, it's by the by. The important thing is that Jasper and Christy won a prize for that, and it was nice to see them coming over and saying hello and waving goodbye.
Well, the games at Partisan though are big games. A 6x4 table at Partisan is one of the smaller games there, probably.
I don't know, John Savage 6x4, the Alchemist guys 1940 6x4, Simon Walker 6x4, Richard Clark 8x4, because you can, but not that much bigger. There's a lot of games that are there that are 6x4,
and there's a lot of games that are there which are 24x8.
There are. That's very true.
That's all part of the spectacle, of course, of a show like Partisan.
Yeah. I was merely thinking out loud. Does it give you a real taste of what the game's about, or is it just there to be visually impressive, and you to get excited about the whole visual experience, as opposed to rolling some dice and playing a real game? But just a thought, just casual, en passant.
It's a bit of both, isn't it, really? Because I think most players are aware that the games at a show like Partisan are really there to inspire as much as to play, even if they're participation games. And that's the point of the show, isn't it, really? It's to showcase the best.
I don't think it is, no.
Cool.
I think any game is appropriate for the show. I don't think they say big games only, please.
But there's very few. I mean, if one says 6x4 is a small game, there's very few 3x3 games there, or 2x2
almost
games.
none. Whereas at Salute, you see acres of 2x2 and 3x3.
Yeah.
Now that is what I would define as a small game, and basically it's an assassin and a robber stealing somebody's handbag and coshing their chihuahua. That's they're that type of games.
Is that a euphemism? I think the thing that's interesting from my perspective there is you made me think about participation games, because when I think of participation games, I tend to think of games in which you can turn up, like the ones that we do, turn up, you can play a bit, play on one side. I think they tend to be slightly smaller games. I don't know if you can just roll up and play as a roll on one of those big 24-foot by 6-foot tables. They tend to be, this is entirely my made-up view, I think they tend to be more controlled by the people around the table and less for participation. You don't kind of roll up and just say, let me command Jeb Stuart's cavalry wing for this battle of whatever. It's kind of, they don't work like that, do they? Or do they?
Some do, I think. Simon Miller's very good at enrolling people to play on his games, and a mate of mine, Frosty from Melbourne in Australia, I bumped into him there. I was amazed. What are you doing? You're in the wrong place. Anyway, he was playing.
They're great.
Yeah, it was nice to see him there. We had a packet of Tim Tams. And if any Australians are listening, they would know what Tim Tam. And I was able to give him a Tim Tam, and he said that kind of kept him going through the day. It was a taste of home, and I think without my Tim Tam emergency supply, he'd have been struggling. But it was good to see him there anyway. But yeah, lots of people from all over the world, which was nice. Quite a few Yanks, a couple of Canadians, obviously some of our European friends. People from far and wide. And what I thought was interesting is that I had a lot more encounters from people from overseas at Partisan than I had at Salute. At Salute, I had a few. Going back 5 years ago, you used to have dozens of people from overseas coming and getting a selfie and this, that, and the other. There seems to have been good old Kerry from New Zealand, from the Bay of Plenty. He was up there. There seems to be a shift for people coming over, and I think maybe that's because in the historical gaming community, for me, Partisan is a 10 out of 10. Whereas shows that have got a mix of content, 2 foot by 2 foot games with Chihuahua assassination, aren't really my gig. And maybe that's indicative of people going, "Wow, Partisan really is best in class when it comes to historical gaming," and that's what I love.
So one of the things which I think was quite interesting, I was talking with somebody, a friend, and he was saying that whatever shows he goes to, Lard games or von Reichswitz press games are normally represented pretty well there. But he's always slightly surprised that the coverage of the hobby press can be a little bit patchy. Some obviously feature those games, but some maybe don't as much. Now, maybe that's a big issue for the future, but I do remember 20 years ago, we struggled to get any attention at all. So I think it's getting better in that regard. Or is there still more to do you think, Richard and Nick?
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I don't particularly go out and court the hobby magazines and say, "Oh, please, 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 put photos of me in it." I'm not that bothered. I mean, WSS, we get really good coverage in WSS. It tends not to be as much in the other ones. I mean, yeah, say what you like about War Games Illustrated. War Games Illustrated is based in Nottingham. It's absolutely at the epicenter of the hobby. There's so much going on in Nottingham. Why would they notice what's going on 2 hours down the road? So they've got their hands busy with that, and we tend not to get so much coverage there. But they have been doing a lot of coverage of Midgard. But then James lives in Nottingham, and so they'll see it. So yeah, for 25 years, I know a song about that. For 25 years, we've I've always felt that we've been slightly underrepresented when you look at how many games at shows. A mate of mine went to Milton Keynes' show the other week, and he said 50% of the games were TooFatLardies games. So I don't know, but I don't care. I'm not really looking to product placement type thing. But it's always nice to get some kind of recognition for that what we're doing is enjoyed, but I think we get that from our customers rather than from particular magazines. But WSS are really good, and I just listened to their podcast yesterday. Actually, they had a nice piece in there about the Full Nelson, which shivered my timbers and spliced my main brace. So that was good.
And how is that coming along? That was the other thing that we were thinking of mentioning to you.
Well, really, really exciting, Sid, because we're play testing at the moment, and we've got lots of Petri dish groups. About, what was it? How many, Rich? Dozen plus 2 dozen?
Couple of dozen. Far more than I anticipated. We had so many volunteers.
Everybody's play testing it. It seems probably more people than ever buy it, but it's been really good, and we're starting to get the feedback from them. Rich and I did a game the other day where we fought a frigate action, which we put on the Patreon channel, which was over in about an hour, wasn't it? I think the video's an hour long, and it was just us playing through from start to finish, and showing people how the rules work. So getting the feedback now, feedback's really good. I have to say, I don't think there's a lot of changes required. I think some explanations around formations and line of battle, etc. But actually, most of the mechanisms are really, really smooth. So hopefully it will go through page testing. Fingers crossed, it will be quite a smooth process. There's bound to be stuff that will come out, emerging situations like when 2 ships collide, and one is kind of bow onto the other one. How do they then fall together and become separated? Those kind of minute details, which you only get when you start to put the ships on the table, are starting to come back through now. But it's a really robust set, I think, and it's good fun to play as well, and it's quick. And I see lots of people, Rich will reinforce this, I'm sure. I see lots of people making boats, and it's even got me back in the garage trying to seek out my old lanterns, because I've got quite a lot of lanterns that have not still to be made, and I'm not going to go into the big 1/700th. I did make a Spanish first rate just to have a bit of a go with it, and I really enjoyed it, but actually I can't see myself making another 30, but I can see myself adding a few more lanterns to my existing fleet. So I think we'll see quite a few naval games this summer, I hope.
So one question that
Hmm.
people have mentioned to me is how many ships does one need to have per side, or how many would you recommend? Two
Hmm.
per side. That's
We
the
had
optimal choice, is it?
two, one
Two.
each.
We
We
have one
played
each.
with two yesterday, and it played a nice game that lasted about 50 minutes. It's, everybody thinks of Trafalgar and the Battle of the Nile and Cape St. Vincent and this, that, and the other, and the glorious 1st of July. But actually, the vast majority of actions were not fleet actions. After Trafalgar in 1805, you had 10 more years of the Napoleonic Wars, and you didn't get a single fleet action. The main thing you see is a war on commerce, and that's a lot more about frigates or smaller privateers coming out and dipping their toe in to try and get rich quick, which I know is, I think, slightly more exciting. I, you definitely could play the Battle of Trafalgar if you took all day, but it would be a hell of a process, getting everybody there and doing it and this, that, and the other. But on a 6x4 table, two or three ship. We played a historical action on Tuesday night, which was three French ships against two British. We played a follow-up historical action, as Nick said, on Friday, which was two ships, one ship against one ship. But what I'm trying to do now is play through all the different historical actions. So the Droit de Homme, the famous action with the Droit de Homme, where it is fighting against a British frigate in heavy seas. We played that at the club the other day, and that was really really good. What's the British ship there, Nick? It's a Razid. It's
Remember.
it's Pellew, Edward Pellew, and
I remember.
Indomitable. It's not though, but it's a name like that. But
Indefatigable.
it's something like that. Anyway, there we are. But yeah, we fought that the other day. So I'm really enjoying fighting through the historical actions because history should really set the benchmark when you're testing a set of rules. Is what happens on the table plausible by comparison with what happened in reality? And it also just sets the context, doesn't it?
Mm.
You chuck the game on the table, and you've immediately got some context because you've done a bit of reading about it. So yeah, I'm really enjoying that.
And
Um,
as regards other things like Market Garden, how's that coming along? And also,
It,
Dave
well,
had a word with me about Vexillarius as well, which sounds
it's
a
not
very
just
a very
funny.
funny.
It's not just funny, Sid. It's vexillarious. And if Dave hasn't murdered me for that joke by the time we get to Christmas, then there'll be something wrong with the world. Well, Market Garden is back with me again. It's been with Richard to
yeah.
be edited, and part of it at least is back with me now. So
Mm.
we're playing table tennis with some adjustments that have got to take place on that.
Mm.
We'll talk about what we've been up to, but one of the things I haven't been up to yet is looking at what Richard sent me back. So
Right. Well, I don't think it'll take you too long to crack on with that. So that is good. I'm very, very busy with editing the Vexillarius, which is Dave Brown's new ancient warfare rules, big battles in ancient warfare. Think General Dame, think Pickett's Charge, but it's blokes in dresses with pointy sticks. So it's if you are playing one of Dave's games, you're going to get something that you know what you're getting in terms of that's the level of command, that's the level of action that he's covering with that. And I think it's good actually. One of the things I enjoy about working with Dave is there's no real conflict between what we produce and what what Dave produces, because Dave produces those sort of big battle actions, whereas we tend to focus, although not exclusively, more at the more at the tactical level. He's operational, I suppose. So yeah, that's good. Interesting one, isn't it? I had a couple of emails from people saying, "I hear Dave got the rules to you. Will they be available next week?"
It's always,
Well,
it's
what are you
always the,
sitting around
I love
for?
it. I really love
it's often
it.
there's often the sort of curse, though, isn't it? Really, when people have the idea for a set of rules, and then inevitably people say, "Well, when are they going to be available?" And when they are available, how many times do you see people playing them? I mean, there's a bit of a delta there, isn't there, between those two things? People wanting and people actually using.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the nice thing about Dave's rules is that you see them being used here, there, and everywhere. They're very, very, very popular, and I know that people are asking when are they going to be available because they want to play them. But the editorial process is a long and tortuous journey, and it really things do not spring forth fully formed. We actually have to take them and go through them and analyze them line by line and are these words exactly what we want to say? Are these rules in the right order? So it doesn't matter who's written the rules. And this is by no means a criticism of Dave, because it's the same with stuff that I write. I have to put it to one side and then go back and look at it after a month with a fresh pair of eyes. Because while you're developing a set of rules, it tends to come out in a sort of flow, and you write in the order that you think about things. And then when you add things in during playtest, you put things in where it feels relevant at that juncture, at that moment in time. And then when it's all done, you pass it on to me, and I then have to say, right, that's the order that you thought about it in. Let's put it in the order that we want people to best understand it in. So it's a torturous process. It's not a particularly fun process, to be honest with you. But yeah, so I'm hoping to get that for the first proofread by the time I go on holiday, which is not far away, 12th of June.
Interesting, isn't it, Rich, what you're saying there about the way you turn things into a format that people expect. I'm throwing my mind back to the old Featherstone rules where you sort
Yeah.
of start with scale, then you go on to movement, then you have firing, then you have melee, then you have morale, that standard sequence of laying things out in the
Yeah.
rules. I mean, ours are different, but actually that is still the backbone of it, isn't it? It's quite interesting that.
Well,
That is an interesting point, because that's not the same as what happened in the role-playing world. So the
No.
role-playing world has taken a very different direction. And I think that's partly because with wargaming, you've always got the focus of figures on a table. But with role-playing, you don't. So there's a lot of attention which is paid to design principles as regards how things are set out, as you would do if you were at an advertising agency, and fonts and illustrations are hugely important in that sort of area. And also there's been a very different sort of recasting of, between the 70s, of how a role-playing game would be set up and how people would approach it now. Is it in a novel form? Is it in a journaling form? Whereas still with wargaming rules, it's still, as you say, Nick, it's very much traditional as regards movement, figures on the table, scale, combat, morale, and then winning the game normally.
Hmm.
that's very old-fashioned.
Well, it's not though, is it? Because you can still see that DNA in the rules. You can still open. You've got chain of command there. You're looking for a point to disprove me, but actually, I could probably pick an equally other set and actually prove it the other way. I think
I,
it's in there. I think it's a
I,
core part of the DNA of the way our rules work.
I'm looking for a point that illustrates the way that I tend to lay things out. And that has got to be that the first time you introduce a principle into the rules, you have to explain that principle, and things then have to follow on from that. So in the way I try to lay things out is that you come into contact with the rules in the order that you will be using them on the table. So when you set up a game, what what is the first thing you come into contact with? So actually, in Chain of Command, we go through some basic stuff. So you've got the ground rules. What's the terrain? What counts as an obstacle?
Logical,
What counts as
logical
cover? What
spot building.
counts? So you define the environment in which you're fighting. Then you define the units. What are leaders? What are units? What are support units?
Yeah.
Whatever. Then we talk about, believe it or not, morale, because that is so core to the game, the concept of force morale. If you leave it till later on in the layout, you'll have to be talking about, oh, when you move, it's affected by morale. So hold on. Oh, that means I've got to have it in before movement. Otherwise, I'll be talking about shock, and people won't know what the hell I'm talking about, because we haven't yet introduced shock.
Yeah.
So the way I did, I've got morale. I've then got the patrol phase. I've then got the turn sequence. I've then got command and control. So all of that comes before deployment, then
Mm.
infantry movement, then vehicle movement, then infantry fire. So movement comes before firing because you are going to move before you
Generally.
fire.
Yeah.
So, but the key factor is you want to try and explain what something means the first time you come into contact with it. You can't start saying, yes, well, when Caesar comes on the table, he'll be able to influence fighting by using his coconuts of command, or whatever the expression is in that particular rule set. And people go, what the fuck are coconuts of command? Because what you have to do is talk about coconuts of command first, and these aren't in Dave's rules, by the way, folks. I'm
Not
using an
yet.
abstract example. So you introduce your coconuts before you then start talking about them.
I'm quite sold on the idea of coconuts of command.
I like them actually.
Yeah, I like the idea. A new rule set is born. We can do Tarzan and the apes.
Yeah. So, but that's my job. I have to think about that. So,
Mm.
I need to every rule set I get, be it whoever's written it, I need to go through that and establish that things are there in the right order. Which when somebody's been working on a set of rules for years, they're not at the point where they're able to have a good. Oh, they can't see the wood for the trees. So that's why we have an editorial role. That's why I do it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've just been sorting out a few sets of rules actually. I hadn't
Mm,
actually planned for any of this, and then on the
mm,
table in the office here, and
mm,
it was interesting. I was just picking up a couple of old sets of non-TooFatLardies rules,
mm.
but really from the 90s and the 80s on English Civil War, and
Yeah.
it's really interesting that they do all conform to that standard of the old style, and it's not
Mm,
necessarily the best way of doing things, but for a lot of rules, even up to quite recently, it's still the accepted sort of way of setting things out. Although I think part
I
of the
might do.
influence over the years is that initiative and initiative movements and
mm.
way in
Yeah.
which forces actually commence their movement and the
Yeah.
order, because I go, you go, has kind of gone out. That
Yeah.
I think has much more of a prominent position in a set of rules. It comes much earlier
Yeah.
than it might previously have done.
If you look at Don Featherstone's rules, I've got some on the shelves here. Where's the section on command and control? Well, there isn't. There won't be one
Mhm.
because that wasn't something that people were focusing on at that point in time. Whereas
Mm.
now, command and control has got to be hugely important on that list because that's basically the engine that drives the whole game.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's why shock links with command and control. So you have to
Mm.
introduce those things at the very beginning. So, for example, in the full Nelson, I put at the very beginning of using your action dice when you strike. Now I know striking happens at the end, but at the
Mm.
beginning of each activation, when your ship is activated, you need to make sure that you don't strike. It's the right place to have it, even though striking happens further down the line.
So
If you
is that
don't
something we
strike,
look for?
now you go on and do the rest. Hmm?
If I'm going around the shelves at a show and I'm picking up sets of rules and I'm
Yeah.
going to flick through them, if I look at the index, does that layout tell me something about the psyche that's in the writer's mind when they put those rules together? So if I see a flow which is a little bit unusual in what I'm normally seeing, does that suggest it's a slightly different set of rules that's out of line with what I might otherwise get elsewhere, or is it the fact that it might conform to the Featherstone model, mean that it's going to be a kind of tried and tested and not perhaps revolutionary in its content? I don't know. Just what Sid said there just made me think that might be an easy acid test to do when I'm picking up a set of rules at a show.
I think what that possibly will tell you more is what the editor wanted it to be,
Yeah.
because most rule sets will now be edited. That the whoever writes the rule set, somebody else will be involved in editing.
Yeah, I think that's true. And 20 or 30 years ago, that might not have been true.
No, it wasn't.
But I think,
Wasn't
but I
true
think
at all.
also people want an experience from a rule set, which is comparable to where things are in the role-playing world.
Yeah.
People want an experience, and they buy a game to read, perhaps not primarily, but almost equally to the actual playing. But they want to buy an experience, and I don't think that would have been the case for sort of rules in the 1990s. You didn't buy Tercio or whatever just to have the reading experience. You played it really with the intent of, I think, playing a game. Might be wrong, but that was certainly why I bought rules in the 80s and 90s, to actually play them and to look at the mechanisms. Whereas here, I think people are interested in more of an experience. And I think that is where indexes come in, because most of these older rules don't have any indexes at all. Try to find something in
Yeah.
whatever set of rules it was and pinpoint it. You've got to read the whole thing as opposed to finding an index. So it has changed.
Well, I think what you're talking about there is the change from amateur to professional. It's the same with rugby union, isn't it? The game, you look at pictures of the England rugby team under Bill Beaumont in the whatever it was, 70s, 80s, and they all had big fat beer guts. And I knew a fellow who played for England. He was a copper, and he used to stand at the side of the road by a roundabout with his England kit in a plastic bag, waiting for somebody to pick him up in a transit van. I mean, you wouldn't get that now, and the world completely changes when when things become more professional. And I think one of the things about old rule sets was that it was very much a labour of love, and it tended to be done by one person, and they'd give it to their mates and say, "Would you please have a read through that?" And their mates would go, "Yeah, I love it," because that's what people say, because they're your mates and they're kind to you. You really do have to find some really horrible bastards to get them to criticise what you've done, because you want somebody to speak truth unto power. And that's a phrase I've mentioned before, but it is important. You need to have somebody provided to give you an honest critique of your rules. That's not something that happened with our rules in 25 years ago, or even 20 years ago. Some would say 15 years. We were getting better 15 years ago, but we're certainly a lot better at it now. But 25 years ago, we were producing exactly that type of thing where we go, this works well down the club, let's put it out so other people can enjoy it. We weren't intentionally producing something that was crap. We just didn't really know anything about publishing. But then nobody else did in the hobby. Everything was in black and white. Everything was run off a Gestetner machine or a photocopier at work and put together with a long arm stapler.
And that's not sets of rules which are in black and white are not worse. I mean, my preference is kind of for black and white and original art, because I think that there's a certain retro aspect to that, but actually it prints cleaner and actually it distracts less from the quality of the rules, really. So you probably have a bit of a pushback to the lavishly illustrated sets of rules as well.
I'm sure that's the case in your old folks' home, but I don't think it's the case for most people. It's I'll give you an example. We for years, certainly for the first 10 years, argued very strongly that black and white rules were perfectly good. Now, there was a reason for that, the economies of scale. When you print in black and white, the unit cost of printing each book is exactly the same whether you print 100 or whether you print 10,000. So, but when we were starting out, very much a low volume publisher, we could get another print run of a set of rules, 100 sets, and that would do us for a year. And we wouldn't be shelling out thousands upon thousands of pounds. So from an economic point of view, going in black and white worked for us. And I also felt very strongly that the rules were just as good in black and white as they would be in colour. When we went to colour, sales of the rules went up by 400%. Give the people what they want.
Okay. Can't argue with
quite
that.
Interesting that
I can only speak from a consumer as opposed to a publisher.
I made those figures up. It might not be 100%.
Our good friend Ken Riley over at Yorkshire Gamer is doing his World Cup of Rules, and I haven't been following it that closely, but I thought I saw a comment that said that the old favourites still remain in that list. They still get through to the final. People still like some of those old favourite rules, and
rapid fire and DBA. Yeah. I mean, that's
do they count in those? DBA, I think probably does. I'm not sure about
1991 for DBA. Rapid fire must have been in the 80s as well.
Yeah, but it's not that same version now, though, is it? I don't believe. I don't know what DBA is on, but but they're still there. There's still a place for these. People are still playing them, and actually, the market is growing. The list of you look at the actual list of rules he puts out there, you think, crikey, there is a lot of stuff available. There's so many options, and that's what's great. And it's not the barriers to entry that we talk about having to be professional with color, etc. Yes, they are there, but actually, in some ways, the barriers are even lower than they ever have been in terms of electric content, PDFs, etc. Lots of people have got the wherewithal to put those together. I think there's lots of fledgling rule writers out there that it should be encouraged by the fact that there's so many games on the market. Anything these days goes. We see lots of figures. Yeah, anything you dream about, you can create as a figure, which
Yeah.
means that any rules you can create, you can also put around those. And we see many mechanisms being repeated, but actually the desire, the spirit, the ambition of the rule writer is actually, in fact, probably it's as important a time now as it ever has been for that because you can get your work out there.
Yeah, but you can get your work out there, but are you going to get it seen by people? That's the real challenge.
That's the thing. Yeah. Well, it's being seen in a very busy marketplace and being seen online,
Yeah,
and being seen at shows.
yeah.
We know how difficult it can be to get spaces at shows as well for that kind of thing. So anyway, big topics, big
This has
Yeah.
issues.
turned into the big issue, hasn't it? Without
Well,
intending it to be.
it is. I mean, I'm not sure that being seen is necessarily what people necessarily want to do with their rules as regards being seen in selling lots of different sets of rules. I'm not sure that's a sensible aspiration. I'm not sure that is people's aspirations when they write rules. What they
Well,
want is their particular period of history and the game in which they've set that period of history, or whatever it is, whether it's historical or ahistorical. They think there's a gap that people aren't playing the game that they want to design. I mean, somebody once mentioned to us, I think, a couple of years ago, Rich, why are you doing a game on whatever the topic was? I play this other set of rules. And I mentioned it to you and to Dave, and I think you both said along the lines of, well, just because somebody's painted a picture of, I don't know, a
mm,
woman with a vase doesn't mean that all pictures of paintings of women with vases have stopped now because somebody's done that. You can recast your image. I've
mm.
painted the turpis. There's a picture of the turpis. It's been painted. Well, that doesn't mean to say you can't actually reconstruct the turpits in a model form or in a different painting. Different sort of evolutions of the same sort of thing are constant. That's why people do it. They don't necessarily do it to sell lots of sets of rules, I don't think.
No, but the point I was making was that if you want your set of rules to have longevity, people have to be aware that it is there. But yeah, I mean, certainly, if you're just doing it for fun and you want to put a set of rules out there, you can go on something like War Games Vault and leave it there and see how it sells. But it's a bit like the I don't know, the indie record charts or whatever for hip hop. If you produce a hip hop song that's only ever seen on the obscure, I don't know anything about this subject, but there we go. If you produce a record that's really obscure and only seen on really obscure music sites, you will only be bought by people who are into really obscure music. So if you want your rules to have a commercial value and earn some money out of them, then you need to be noticed. You do need to be noticed. Otherwise, and one of the problems we've got is that there's a lot of things being noticed because, going back to what we were saying about war games magazines, war games magazines are always talking about what's new and what's exciting and what's trendy. I've always said that there are two types of war games rules out there. There's the it's like hit records. There's the birdie song that gets played by your kids for 3 months, driving you up the wall, and they never play it again. And there's Dark Side of the Moon, which is still being played 40 years later. Now, I like neither of those records, to be honest with you, but the principle remains that some products, whether they're records or war games rules or whatever, have longevity. With war games rules, I think that comes down to again providing an ongoing challenge.
Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? I mean, that's
Yeah,
it in a nutshell. It's
yeah,
providing that challenge, so
yeah.
there's a scope and an ability to use those rules for different situations and different themes, but also the support as well. I mean, think about all those
Mm,
Osprey rules. Not a dig at Osprey before anyone
mm,
says that, but those Osprey rules are kind of churned out fairly regularly, all by people who are super well-meaning, capable people. But are
mm,
they all supported? I mean, I've bought many of those Osprey rules. I really love them. They're
mm,
really great. 64 pages of fun and an interesting
mm,
thing, but how many of them are actively supported? And that may be something which is an Osprey thing,
mm,
but often the baton's picked up by people who really love the rules and they sort of stuff things on a blog or on social media. But it's the support as well as the ability to turn the actual rules to different scenarios and different campaigns within them. And that's
And
what
increasingly, for people like us, it's how do we get our rules on the shelves in war games hobby shops who aren't interested in stocking our rules because we don't focus on competitive play. There was a question being asked the other day, somebody saying they cannot find a set of rules that we produced anywhere in the country where they live because the war games hobby shops aren't stocking them, and we see that a lot. If I'm travelling and there's a hobby shop there, a war game shop there, I'll go in and I'll have a look. How often do they have our stuff on the shelves? Almost never, almost never. And in terms of visibility, well, what we're seeing is, and that's why we're seeing a morphing of some of the bigger war game shows away from historical wargaming to more general gaming, because war games. I had a chat with the guy who runs the local war game store here, where we live, and I about stocking our rules, and he said, "No, I'm not interested. It doesn't fit our business model, which is to get a league together where people come in, they buy your figures off me." And then they have to use those figures to play in the league, and they come out, and every 3 years, rinse and repeat, a new version of the rules comes out, and we keep them playing in the league. Well, we don't fit their business model, and in terms of visibility, that means historical wargaming is struggling. Now, you do get some companies who are bucking the trend, but they are very much the ones who are saying, "Here's a game in a box, here's the figures, here's a set of rules that you can use for competitions, and away you go." We don't do that. We're not there. So visibility is an issue for everybody.
would you ever consider changing that to have a set of rules which is more competitive?
No,
I mean, there's
no,
certainly some sets of rules.
no.
Business response there from
Oh, I'm
Mr.
not doing
Richard
that.
Clark.
You're good at what you're good at, and I'm not interested in. I'm not interested in competitive sets of rules. It's this is about historical wargaming. This is about playing games with history that are inspiring, that are fun, that are all about the narrative. I'm not interested in people having a competition and having a table and mini maxing their armies. That's the total antithesis of what I and hopefully Nick are. I haven't asked him. It's only been 25 years.
Isn't that the philosophy, though? Partly that philosophy is driven by the players, isn't it? How they choose to play it.
It's
So
up
I,
to them.
I can join my local squash club or my local chess club or my local paddle club,
Yeah,
and I can do that recreationally,
yeah.
or I can sort of take part in their ladder, where I get to play other people. And sometimes I'm going to come across other people that are just there for a bit of fun, and sometimes I'm going to come across that Mr. Competitive who's going to, want to wipe my ass every time we play a game. And oh no, whip my ass.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that was a wonderful quote from Antwerp, wasn't it?
I purposely got that wrong, of course. Um, but you're going to get these, aren't you? Sometimes you're going to get people who are there to win, and we do see it in friendly games. We know that there are players who play to win, absolutely play to win, and
Yeah.
they will maximise the rules to get their best advantage. Sometimes it's down to the players to just agree what that formation
Yeah,
is.
it
You
is.
could have a non-competitive league. That's absolutely fine. Every Sunday afternoon in the country, cricket clubs play in a league, which is kind of they play in the league because the league gives them the structure to find opponents and play a game. But
Mm.
actually, the games are played in a really great spirit. The points that they get from them don't really matter.
Yeah,
Really, you might get promotion and demotion, but people just do it for fun.
there's
Yeah,
not a
And
lot of
people playing the
difference.
games probably don't even have any clue about how the league works.
Yeah, there's not a lot of difference between What a Cowboy and a campaign in What a Cowboy when people, when the characters in What a Cowboy get better weapons and supporters and a larger gang.
Mm.
Not a lot of difference between that and other games of a similar nature, More Time and Necromunda from GW, which have been supported for years and years and years, which people can play competitively. You don't lose all the essence of the game just because you've got a league and a competition in respect of where people are at the top of the league, they've got the biggest gang or whatever. And I can't believe that that wouldn't be impossible, but
But
there's a thing.
the min-maxing thing that Richard talks about, that's the problem. That's
But do you want a shotgun or a derringer? That's a
well, what
min-max
did my
choice, isn't
character
it?
have? What did my character have historically?
But your character could take both. They've got $50. They can go to the store. They could buy a derringer, or they could buy a shotgun.
Well, maybe they're buying for
Neither's
their own
better or worse, but
depends
depends
what they're
if you.
going to do with it.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you might better keep a shotgun in your knickers, but I'm not sure anybody else could.
Well, I
So,
don't know. Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. If somebody if somebody said, "Oh, we're going to run a competitive league of chain of command at our local game store," I, I'm not going to say don't. I'd just say, well, you have fun, mate. It's just not something I'm going to get involved in, and I'm not going to write a set of rules designed for that type of play.
I think it's also about what you can support, isn't it? I can support you. We can support you within reason if you're using them in the manner in which they've been designed. But
Yeah.
if you do something else with them, then we can't. It's like any kind of product, isn't it? If you use your microwave to cook food, then it's the warranty is covered. If you use it to go bobsleighing in, then actually the warranty no longer applies.
Or superheat sand, as I was doing last week to get some basing done.
Nice.
It stunk the kitchen out. Absolutely horrible. My wife was not pleased.
Right,
very
where are we,
good.
Sid? You're supposed to be the compere here.
Well, no,
We're
I
so
was
far
letting, I
off
was
track.
letting
I
that
don't know where we are.
discussion. I was letting that discussion go to where I think we've got to. So I think what we'll do now is we'll take a brief break and then
Cool.
we'll wander down to the workshop, see what we've all been up to, and maybe have a think about, well, what was our big issue, but now is probably possibly our smaller issue for the actual for the show. So
Yeah.
back in a moment. And we're back. And we're back in the workshop. So, chaps, what have you been busy at doing? If I can rephrase those words into a sentence, what have we got on the workshop bench?
I've actually completed a unit, Sid. I've had a really difficult first, well, almost half of the year, isn't it? We've had so much going on. I've been really busy with work. We've had lots of domestic stuff kicking off. But I have moved forward again with the what was it? The Are You Up For It challenge. I finally got my New Orleans Greys completed just yesterday. In fact, they're not even varnished yet. I need to wait. I'm waiting for some more spray varnish to arrive tomorrow, and I'll hopefully spray those up. But 3 groups of 8 for my New Orleans Greys for Texas Revolution. Really nice. And mix of Boot Hill and Artisan. Put a little piece on the Patreon about those just to keep the story up to date. So they make a really important part of the Texian force. They're a bit like the 95th Rifles for Napoleonics. They're kind of on every game you ever see. There's a unit of New Orleans Greys. You kind of got to have them. They're the only uniformed group that the Texans had. So wargamers obviously kind of gravitate towards them and make sure that they're represented. But also, actually, not only that, but historically they do take part in most of the actions during the campaign. So actually, it's perfectly reasonable to have a group of them. So I've got 3 groups of 8 with each group of 8 has potentially an NCO and 2 leaders to go on top of that as well, and a drummer.
Each group of 8.
Well, I've got. I'm not going to allocate them at that level, but that's
Yeah.
what I've got. I've got room for that.
Pick
I
a mix
don't know
of
about
all
you,
that.
but I always do more leaders than I actually
Yeah,
need
yeah,
because
yeah.
sometimes you want this one, sometimes you want the other one.
Mm.
And so you've also always got this spare capacity, this redundancy, if you like, in the leaders that you've got on the table.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I did on the same vein was I had a Boot Hill Mexican standard bearer, and I picked up from actually, Sid, you said about best bits on the bench. Got a company who makes this now, but I've got a pack of stuff, pack of plastic bits and pieces, which are like church pillage type stuff, crosses and treasure boxes and that sort of thing. So I've given this guy a big cross of Jesus on a big long pole, which he's going to advance in the front of all the Mexican units to give them the kind of spirit of the martyrs to carry them into action. Totally fictional, but that's the fun you can have with sharp practice. When history meets sharp practice, therein lays the story. So the story is, that this Tacos Picantes, my Mexican leader, has equipped his men with this cross of Jesus, which is
That-
made from the blood of martyrs, and that will invigorate them in action.
They did look really nice, and that spillage and spoil and spoils of war and loot. That is it. Victrix who make that. It's a really nice little
I think it
set
is a really nice couple of sets actually. They've got some really nice sets coming out, and I've also, when it comes to Victrix, I've pre-ordered their is it 72 medieval? They've got a medieval warband where I think it's got 72 or 42 figures in it. That's really quite nice. I'm
Mm.
looking forward to getting my hands on that eventually. Don't know what to do with it, but I just felt that it was one of those things I'd like to have.
James is doing a Baron's War goblet-sized campaign for Midgard, which will be one that I'd
Fun.
like to game. So all these Baron's War figures you've been talking about buying are perfect for that.
And the other thing I'm doing, Sid, is because we're taking Go Commando on the games circuit, taking
Hmm.
to Go Commando, Go Commando. Here he is. Look, there's Sydney. Then you can see if you're watching, you can see. If you're only got the audio version, you will never know what just occurred.
Was that image
But
has that image been actually licensed by my licensing people,
no, not
Nicholas?
at all. No, not at all.
Okay,
There's
all
only
right.
one.
So it's
It's
been
not made for
used
commercial gain.
infringing my intellectual property. Okay, you'll have a solicitor's
So,
letter
are
on
you are you are
Monday.
you are you, so you connecting yourself with the person in that image? Are you? That's interesting.
It's clearly passing off. It's
It's
clearly
yeah.
passing
It's
off.
more interesting. I'm interested to know what it is about that person in the image that you think connects them to you, Sid. Anyway, the
Maybe
so
the word Sydney.
what we're doing what we're doing with Go Commando is I'm taking it to Evesham next week. I'm also using the opportunity to get that. Remember that big container ship or cargo ship that I bought? It's about
Yes.
3 foot long. I'm using that as an opportunity to
Yeah.
galvanize me to get that boat in on the table. So that's going to be doing a dockyard game. Not quite sure exactly yet the scenario. Still got 2 days to work it out. But it's going to have the boat in it, and we're going to have a commando raid set on that. So we're going to be doing that at Evesham. Going to play it twice there. I've also got the Go Commando clock. The kind of part of the game of Go Commando is synchronize your watches. So I've got this kind of 3D printed clock face that we're going to be using, which is a prototype. I've painted that up too, ready for go for next week, and that will be Evesham. We're going to do it. I'm going to do it at a live workshop. Not quite sure where else. I can't think at the moment, but we'll do maybe Clotted Lard, perhaps be taking it there too. Um, so that's kind of me getting the paints out in the hot sun, which I was a bit worried about. My wet palette shriveled up like Wilfred Bramble's neck.
I wonder what you're going to say there. I was going, fucking hell.
I had to think on my feet. Um, yeah, nice to be painting again, Sid. The first stuff I've really got properly through my uh through my blockage, I guess, through
Oof,
haven't got
oof.
much out early this year. I've had a bit of a block in the system, but we seem to have moved that block now,
And
and
how
hopefully
did you
more
get
to
rid of
follow.
that? Just to sort of like just oh Richard's gone. How did you do that? Just sit down and paint? Was it as
Well, it
simple
was
as
two things.
that, or was it
Firstly,
finding
it's
something?
people kept saying to me, "Where are your New Orleans Greys? How are you getting on with your with your Texas More Independent stuff?" Because it was we did it on Patreon, so it kind of pushed me to make sure I had got to
Mm.
keep this going, got to keep this going. The approach of Evesham and the OML Games Day is a kind of great thing. If you know you've got to do it for an event, it makes you do it, doesn't it? And also the planet starts to align a bit more. We've had an awful lot of stuff going on domestically and on the work front. And so actually you just get this little window where you think, actually, I can just get a little bit done there. And I need those little spaces. I find that painting is really good for my mental well-being. So actually, I need that space just to put a bit of time into painting. It means that I'll put everything else in the world behind me. For a moment that I'm doing it, it's just me and the figures that I'm working on. And that's nice, right? So you don't always get the chance to do that, but it's important to have these little air holes to come up into where you can do that kind of stuff. I mean, Rich is living it all the time. He's painting and producing stuff all the time. His mojo is driven by the imperative to just get stuff done. And nobody can match Rich's output. Um, but we need to find these little places where we can find our space to do our stuff.
Yeah, no, it's very important. It's very important. And keeping that motivation, the more you do, the more you often want to do, but it can be difficult sometimes getting started after a bit of a dry run or dry spell, really. Richard, anything from you? What have you been
I
building?
find on that subject that I'll produce loads and loads and loads and loads of stuff, and then I cannot touch anything for months. I literally can't do it. But the only way I can tempt myself back in is by going, oh, I need one more of them for this game that I'm doing. So, but anyway, lots of ships. 30 ships I'm up to now,
Mm.
which is
Mm.
insane.
So
Um,
why are you doing so many when, you know, are
because
different types of ships, or why? People
because
don't need to do that though, do they?
I'm a
You know,
megalomaniac. No,
yes.
but when I'm testing a set of rules, I want to have all the different types. So I want to be doing a ship of the line action with 6 ships with 100 gunner and maybe an 80 gunner and 3 74s. But equally, if I'm doing frigate squadron in the Channel, the Western Squadron, then I want to be doing maybe three frigates with a couple of brigs or schooners or sloops or whatever. And if I've got my Frenchmen, I want them coming out in a chasse maree, and all little privateer ships. And you think, right, I've got to. I've got to do this scenario with a 64 gunner that has been razzied down to make it a fourth rate or fifth rate frigate. And so I just like to have the proper ship. I mean, I could proxy it and say, oh, that ship represents this. But there's no fun in that, is there? I don't think. Anyway, but I'm nearing the end of it. I don't really need to do an awful lot more, but I am about to do my American kids for the Great Lakes, mate. Great Lakes. The War of
Now that I could be
1812.
tempted into that I could be tempted
Wow.
into.
I just like getting lots of little ships as well because that rocks my world. That's what I want to be doing. Big ships, the big liners, because that's where the word cruise liner comes from, Sydney. You know,
Yeah.
the ships of the line were known as liners, and that's so when you go on your saga cruise with Doris and Fred, you'll be able to tell them that over your prawn cocktails. And Frey
God.
Bentos pie. But yeah, so but because I'm getting ready for Evesham, I'm finishing off Panzer. Now that doesn't take a lot actually, but I've got a lot of foliage because Panzer had just driven all the way to Normandy and they were being harassed by Allied air power all the way. So basically, their vehicles look like moving compost bins with a few branches on top. So I'm actually adding all of that to my vehicles and just finishing off a couple of things, like a couple of machine gunners to go in the Aufklärungs half tracks. And so that should be fun. That'll be nice. I'm doing that this week. So I've been preparing all that and I've got all my foliage. I've been buying different sorts of bushes. The sort of
Those
Nazi Merkin type thing.
yeah.
Yeah. So that'll be fun. But do you know what? I normally go through my Amazon purchases when we're about to do this to see what the best bit on the bench is because I look at all the shit I've bought and and I have really bought so much shit that is so shit it doesn't qualify as the best bit on the bench. I haven't got anything for the best bit on the bench, which I feel sad about.
Nothing at all. Okay,
No,
that's
but
a
what?
first. I think that's actually a first, isn't it, of some sort?
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it?
Well,
Difficult.
I put if I didn't really have anything said, and then we talked about those Victrix, bags of I can't remember what they're called now, but they've got sort of church stuff and
Yeah.
pillage type, 'cause
The game's called
it's
Pillage, isn't it, or something? I
well,
think.
I don't know if it's to support that game or not. It might be, but there's another one that's like a market stall bag. They've got market
Yeah,
stalls
yeah.
and benches and tables.
I've seen
They're
them.
great.
I haven't seen them in the flesh. I've just seen them online.
Yeah, I've got them. They're
I
really,
love
really
stuff
good.
like that. I really love stuff like that. I tend to buy that stuff and chuck it straight in the spares box. If I'm
Yeah, exactly.
if I'm at a show, I'll go. I'll have that. That will go straight in the spares box.
Exactly
And
that.
it might take 6 years because I'll use that bit for one project and that bit for another. But you could end up, well, doing a project with Panzer Lehr, and there's a picture of the fallen Madonna with, relative appendages.
Yeah.
And you could have that as a looted piece of art or something on the back of a tank, and things like that that are slightly out of context. I've got one. I can't remember what the tank is. I think it might be a JS2, a Soviet JS2, that has got a grandfather clock on the back. and a bicycle where they've nicked this stuff. And it's incongruous, but it really sets the model off. I like it.
Very Russian, very Russian.
Oh, those Russians.
That's very good. Well, I've been doing a little bit of urban terrain building, so it's probably about the last thing I'll do for my various sort of Japanese games, and it's just finishing off a small town, an urban setting.
What about the
The
baths?
Well, they are part of it. They are
Ah.
part of it for the Edo period. So
Right.
there is a bathhouse, which was essential for social interaction in different districts of Edo, and there's various sort of Edo buildings as well, which I got from Ashiro, which are quite nice. So yeah, that hopefully that'll be coming out at Lard Workshop. But and not putting a date on it. It might be a bit later in the year, but that's the last bit I've got to do. Hard to believe, but yeah, all those years coming around, and then on to pastures new after that. Sell it all, flog it, move on.
Are you leaving us, Sydney? Your celebrity status has reached the point you don't need us anymore.
Oh, very good. We'll leave that to a popular. So, best bit on the bench? No,
Nothing.
nothing.
Bugger all.
We don't have anything. That's fine.
Yes.
Well, let's move back to the studio where we have a smaller than big issue waiting for us, which I think is quite a good one. So let's wend our way up the Lard Island path back to the couch of contemplation.
Oh, not the sofa of sincerity.
We can sit on that if you really want.
Yeah, I prefer that.
Sydney Roundward. He's got red trousers.
Sydney Roundwood, Sofa of Sincerity.
And we're back. We're back. Here we go. The sofa of sincerity. It is
No,
comfortable.
I'm on the couch of contemplation now.
Hang on
It
a
was
minute.
more
You just
comfy.
changed. You
No,
just
it was
changed.
more comfy.
I'm in
Right.
the armchair of accomplishment.
The Billy No Mates chair, as it's also called. Excellent. Excellent.
The footstool of fun.
Well, the issue either on the armchair of accomplishment or the couch of contemplation is we have come across non-player characters in various sort of games over the years. They're obviously very familiar to people playing role-playing games. But Richard, you and Nick as well, you recently mentioned you're keen to introduce a more structured approach to these with sharp practice. But before we actually go on to thinking about that, I think the question is, should we even have active civilians, non-player characters of all kinds, in historical war games? And if so, which historical actions did they make a difference in? Off to Google you go. And more seriously, what do they really add to a game?
Well, Nick, I mean, the Phillips factory.
The
With
Phillips
the-
factory, what in
Eindhoven.
Eindhoven?
Yeah,
In
with
Eindhoven.
the local Dutch volunteers springing out. Come this way, follow us now.
Yeah.
We show you
Yeah,
good time.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? You do come across these people. Certainly, Market Garden is full of those instances where the Allies encounter Dutch resistance people or just Dutch villagers and ask them for information. And sometimes they believe that information, sometimes they don't. Sometimes, of course, you've got people who are sympathetic. Sometimes you've got people who are not sympathetic. Sometimes you've got people who just want to hide in the cellar and don't want to be seen. You know, when you think about all the games at Arnhem, for instance, a lot of the games in those tables where we've got games going on in the perimeter, a lot of those cellars are filled with families who are hiding from the war that arrived without warning. You know, in a lot of instances when the war arrives in modern war, the civilian population gets a chance to get out of the way, but at Arnhem it didn't. But Arnhem isn't really the case in point for this. There are games. Sharp Practice is a great one where you do want non-player characters. Water Cowboy is one where you might have non-player characters. You have the barman, you know, at the saloon, or you might have the bank manager or the woman who works behind the door, behind the counter at the ironmongers. You're coming in town looking for Deputy Dog, and you want to know where he is. So you go into the shop, you kick the door in the hairdressers, and you ask the barbers for information. And what does the barber do? Does he run out the back, or does he pull a weapon on you, or does he just tell you what he knows?
Well, there's really, I mean, that is exactly right, but there's a really good point there, isn't there? Because frontier history, of which West Texas, as we talked about before, the American West, great examples, but also in Africa and various different places like that. There's a line between competence and non-competence, and it's very thin, isn't it? Because so many of those civilian militias are basically, there could be NPCs in one game and not in the other. So they do really play a very active role, and a lot of the in Texas, for instance, as you've been talking about, protecting civilians is a sort of key part in the historical deployment of military forces as well, which is
Yeah, I
slightly
mean,
different to the role of non-player characters in the Western Desert in 1942. Are you going to find any at all?
well, it's kind of this is it. In the full Nelson, you're not going to have non-player characters, right?
You have a
It's extremely
merchantman. You'd have a
unlikely you're going to
merchantman,
encounter
though,
anybody.
wouldn't you?
But
But you would
well,
have
but
you would have convoys. You would have, though they'd be absolutely critical, wouldn't they? East Indiamen.
yeah,
I mean,
you
are they
would, but
competent or not?
they're unlikely to be part of the game. They might be written into the scenario. But when you play What a Cowboy, when you play Chain of Command to some degree, maybe, but more particularly when you play Sharp Practice, which is a narrative-driven game filled with characters, then you are going to encounter characters. You're going to need characters to help build the story and to help give the players an interaction that actually builds on their game experience. So Richard's been working on some ideas about how we can do that, because sometimes you roll a dice and you might say, I want to talk to the shopkeeper,
Yeah.
and what are you going to say to him? I want to ask him where Deputy Dog is hiding. Right, okay, well, you roll the dice on a six, he tells you, on a one, he runs out the back. You say it's kind of some of these systems are a bit brutal. I think role play games are quite good at doing this sometimes, although probably they go to a different extent to making it work. And even non-player characters sometimes in role play games are still designed to be in the scenario by the games master. So they still have a kind of an attitude that you might want to reflect. But Rich has done quite a lot of good work in the last month about how a system might work in sharp practice, particularly, or I guess in any game really, Rich, for non-player characters. Do you want to tell us about what you've been working on, mate?
Not really, but I'll tell you about the concepts.
All right then. Let's talk about something else.
Yeah, no, the devil's in the detail, isn't it? But actually, here I just want to. The thing I'm interested in is that in a game like Dungeons and Dragons, you will have non-player characters, some of whom have got very specific roles. So you enter the door. You find yourself in a chamber 20 feet by 11 feet, in the center of which is what appears to be an altar, above which is an oil lamp casting light on it. The room has got shadows around the edges, but an elderly man emerges from the shadows. He has got ram's horns on his head and and an off-the-shoulder gold lame number. And is carrying a Tesco shopping bag. How do you respond? Well, the chances are this is not somebody random. Well, it sounds a bit random if I'm honest, but that's somebody who's written into the game. They are a non-player character, but the games master will have written them in. And you question him. Well, what are you doing with the Tesco bag? Why are you wearing a gold lame number? Is that significant to your role? Are you a priest or whatever? And you go through that, and the games master or the scenario designer will have set that up, and so he knows what that person is to do. There are benefits in interacting with that individual, as presumably he will give you one or two pieces of the jigsaw puzzle that you are looking to put together to get the overall view of what's happening. The other is more the wandering monster, where you just happen to bump into somebody rather randomly, and there they tend to. Oh, it's a long time since I played Dungeons and Dragons, but they tended to attack you. But equally, I guess you could have wandering monsters who aren't monsters and aren't particularly wandering. They're just somebody that you come across, and their response could be varied. So it may be that they go and fetch the policeman as soon as they see you, or it may be that they come up to you and say, what are you looking for? Can I give you some advice? And I think the thing with sharp practice was always written as a narrative set of rules. But when it came to these characters around the edges, the ancillary characters who were there on the tabletop, it really depended on the person designing the scenario, excuse me, or running the scenario, to play that same role as you would with a dungeon master, and basically wing it. You would make it up, roll a dice, as you say. If it's a six, it's positive. If it's a one, decidedly negative, and if it's somewhere in between where you just have to make a vague guess as to what you think they should be doing. I was rather keen to make that more structured, whereby um, you could have the same sort of thing. You could have characters. So your objective, Nick, in this game set in Oosterbeek is to make contact with the Dutch resistance leader who is off table, but you are fairly certain that somebody in the 20 houses who are on your table will know who they are and will be able to make contact with them. So you need to go and knock on doors, and hopefully the person you find is somebody who goes and takes the message to the bloke from the Phillips factory and not the local NSB
Yeah.
Ortsführer or whatever their ranks were. But I was really keen to formalize or structure the role of the NPCs specifically for sharp practice. And then I thought, well, you can have that with chain of command to a degree in certain scenarios, can't you? Let's say you want to cross the bridge. Where have the Germans got where have the Germans set their explosives? Where have they got the detonator? Just bits and pieces like that. And I thought actually you should be able to create a one size fits all system to manage the response and reaction of non-player characters. So it's just a case of trying to. Now you can have some non-player characters who are going to intervene. So, for example, if you're playing a game of big chain of command, maybe the brigadier intervenes and actually says, "No, you don't have this support available at the moment." But equally, you're more likely to have it at a local level where you meet a wounded man who will tell you what vehicles the Germans have because he's been lying there in that hedgerow for 2 days. Just trying to structure that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a sort of form of predicting the responses within a range of plausible outcomes, isn't it, with 1 or 2 outliers as well?
Well,
Yeah.
I think the range of possible outcomes is limited, isn't it? That's what's important. You're not going to meet a man who's wounded and been lying in a ditch for 2 days and start having a discussion with him about theology and the Eucharist. You are going to be saying to him, "Do you know where the Germans are?" Or and maybe in that scenario, if your scouts find that wounded man, maybe I've already designed that into a scenario whereby if he feels like giving you the information based on the fact he likes your smile, he's got some information ready to go for you. You just have to persuade him to give that information up. Mm-hmm. Whereas on the other hand, it could be that when you kick in the back door of a house in Normandy, ready to throw in your fragmentation grenade, you kick the door in and there's a little old lady peeling the potatoes, and that's far more random. What response are you likely to get from that? What benefit could you get from that conversation? I don't know. It could be,
and also about what the disposition might be, the natural inclination of the people that address. If I'm in that western town and I'm looking for Deputy Dog, and Deputy Dog is the most feared person in town, then people are not probably going to want to talk to me about where he is. They're not going to say, "Oh, he's over there at the saloon." They're going to not want to talk to me. So you can factor that in as well.
So there needs to be a mechanism for a dialogue where you persuade them to give up that information. Now, that might be a very, very simple process where it doesn't take a lot because that person likes you, is on side with you as the lawman automatically because they are a law-abiding person. But if you've gone into a den of banditos in a bar, the chances are they're not going to go, "Hooray, it's the local police, let's tell them all we know." They're going to say, badges, we don't need no stinking badges and stuff like that. And in that situation, you're going to have more interaction with them to persuade them that your badges don't stink.
Well, let's kick those ideas around over the next few weeks and see where we get to. We can always report back on the Patreon group and/or the next edition of the Oddcast.
The next edition of the podcast. I think. I mean, I did try it at at Partisan, and we had a couple of opportunities where people had to torture the bandit leader before he was part of the guillotine. No, the French intelligence officer Colonel Odell Dupuis turned up at the place where the Spanish bandit was being held to interrogate him before he was sent to the guillotine. Because let's face it, there's no point interrogating him after he's been sent to the guillotine. So we had a couple of conversations that we ran through there, and in both cases, the bandit leader spat in the face of the French colonel and refused to give him any information, which was quite fun.
Yeah, there's some really good things out there, which are also people have done it by different ways. I mean, there's one particularly memorable sort of game that I know in which a town is divided into 4 or 5 different quarters, and each quarters the occupants are from a different social demographic and they react in certain different ways, and they've each got different responses which can be made. I mean, it's something similar to that which you're perhaps looking for, but it really does add a real flavour to, just going to urban areas. And that was something that, we've talked about before and we've written about in the various sort of Lard magazines, trying to create a feel that it's plausible but fun, but also includes the third limb of the table, which is not just the combatants, but actually the people who are living in the area.
Exactly.
It's like a form of living terrain.
And it's something you would season to taste. So with chain of command, it's not going to happen a lot. You're not going to have a whole village going about their daily business while the Brits and the Americans and the Germans fight over it. But in sharp practice, you are going to have people working in the fields. You are going to have people in the bar. You are going to have a priest in the church. And in those situations, maybe you've got 6 figures on the table, and one of whom is pre-programmed that we know how they're going to respond. Maybe he's the agent. You just don't know which of the 6 figures is the agent. But the others should have some response to you. One of them might be on side with you. You discover through this mechanism that he supports your side in the fight. And he might say, yeah, the guy you want is Don Juan over there in the tapas shop.
And persuade is such a useful skill in that regard. And again, that's picked up from various other different sort of games, whether it's oratory or persuade or fast talk, but probably come under the limb of persuade as opposed to observe, although the two could be used together. So certainly persuading
and threaten.
Yeah, intimidate is another another great skill.
I've kind of written that in as a last resort, where I mean, not if you are yes, even if you're interrogating somebody, you'll try and do it nicely, won't you? It's
got a lot of potential, really, because of some games, really historical scenarios sometimes are all about information gathering.
Yeah.
You throw out a Vietnam game, for instance, where the patrol goes into the village. Now, often on a tabletop, you might, you're looking for a local informant, and there might be 3 figures on the table, and one of them's the informant. Whereas with this, you can actually have more. You can have a denser civilian population, and it's then about how you interact with that population to get the information you want. So the game, which is obviously a war game, often they culminate in a firefight of some kind, because that's what people want from their games. But actually, sometimes these information gathering games might be a game within themselves, and they're quite interesting too. So you could definitely put the different angle on the game by having more of this interaction and having a mechanism that allows you to do that in a way that's smooth and really portable from one rule set to another. Not embedded within one particular rule set, but actually one you can use across any kind of tabletop game where you've got interaction. It's really nice aspiration, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of something. I mean, it's not really a commercial product, but it's kind of something I thought would be nice in Lard magazine this year. To provide people with here you go, you use this, see how it runs, and it's been fun because we've been using the Bruce Forsyth play your cards right patent mechanism, which is always a winner. People love playing that.
Always a winner.
That's no lie, but yeah. So that's just something that I've been working on. It's just the idea of how to get that to feel plausible and not not over dominate the game. You want it to be something that feels like a natural appendage to it rather than something that's welded on top.
Well, on that aspect, do the players ever know what the metric of success is? Because if it's all something that the game's runner controls, then you can smooth all of those rough edges out if they do arise in the game.
But it's interesting actually because, but it's interesting that I've got two mechanisms that I've been trialing, and one is that you know what your objective is. If you do this much, you have succeeded. You know you've succeeded in getting the information from them. But I've got the other one where you don't know whether you've succeeded until after you give up. So you might say, right, I've had this conversation and I think I've said enough. And only at that point do you discover you nearly had said enough, but you haven't quite. So you've got to try again.
Yeah.
But that's Anyway, that's something I'm working with, and I just think there could be options there that will enhance our games. It's just a bit of an add-on that adds something in a more formal, structured fashion, rather than just relying on everybody to make things up, because not everybody feels confident to make things up or want to make things up. And there are some fabulous civilian figures out there that could really add to a game. You've got to find the Duchess and escort her off the table, and wow, I mean, that's a great scenario, isn't it?
Certainly is. We've played that a few times. But anyway, what we've also done is come to the end of the show, I feel. So it's been a really interesting discussion. Our big issue was a smaller issue than we thought, but we had a new big issue which organically developed. So I have to thank you both for that. It's been really good fun. We will personally see each other just in a few days' time at Evesham. And no doubt many of the people listening might also be there. But in the meantime, I'd just like to say good night and good afternoon and whatever it is to all of the listeners, wherever you are in the world. And to thank my guests, Richard Clark and Nick Skinner. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Sid.
You're welcome.
Always a pleasure.
And let's just play ourselves out once again, another time with Roger Barraclough and the band.
In tonight's show, Sydney Roundwood was joined by Nick Skinner and Richard Clark, with music by Roger Barraclough and his band.